The views and opinions of this broadcast do not reflect the views and opinions of Armed Media, UNU Productions and its affiliates. Enjoy the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very fine evening to you. This is Rob Rosenthal, your host of All You Can Eat, coming to you live from New York City, New York. A beautiful day here in the Big Apple, 80 and sunny. Fantastic day. And this is, episode number 13. Particularly thrilled this evening because I have a great guest who I will introduce momentarily. He knows, he's an expert on the subject of wine, and that's very relevant right now as we're heading into Memorial Day weekend. The timing could not be more perfect for us. I will tell you that the great epicure, gastronome, Jean-Antoine Brillat-Savarin said that Burgundy makes you think of silly things, Bordeaux makes you talk of them, Champagne makes you do them. And while I have no argument with any of them, as we come into Memorial Day weekend, I got to be honest with you, I'm thinking rosé. And so tonight's guest, I'm teasing the guest here. I will introduce him momentarily. Is not only an expert on the subject of wine, the news editor, actually, of Wine Spectator, the most prestigious media magazine, really, in the magazine and online offering in the world of wine. But he actually wrote the cover story in the current issue. This is the June 2018 issue that is either in the mailbox or in your home if you're lucky enough to subscribe to Wine Spectator. And the subject of the cover story is rosé. So we're going to talk about wine, and we're going to get a lot into rosé. Right before we do, I just want to shout out a couple of things. First of all, I happen to be just getting in the frame, if you will, which is to say that I am currently enjoying a Chateau La Gourdon La Chapelle. This is a 2017 rosé, Côte de Provence. You can generally find it in the price range of $22 to $27. I have tasted it once before and was worth getting again. Kind of floral, little notes of strawberry, if you will, a touch of grapefruit, a scent of kind of roses, and I looked up some of the other reviews on it and was fascinated. Oh, not fascinated, I shouldn't say that. I was intrigued to see somebody literally comment on it by saying that it was a fascinating bouquet of bubblegum and watermelon. Anyway, we're going to talk a lot about wine. We're going to talk about rosé. I just want to say that it was 2 weeks ago today that I found myself in the city of New Orleans. And I was invited there for an event, both to interview the third and fourth generation of the Brennan family, and they are really kind of a restaurant dynasty in the city of New Orleans, so that was great to go meet them. But it was a particularly special event in that they had invited over from Italy, just outside of, where was he, Florence, yes, probably the world's most famous butcher, Dario Cecchini, 8th generation butcher from Italy, who put on quite the show, a demonstration. I ate meat for 48 hours in a row. But I'll tell you what about New Orleans. If you've been, you know. If you haven't, you got to go. And the reason why, among others, it's the 300th birthday celebration of the city at this point, right now as we speak. I will tell you that among other reasons, from a food perspective, there aren't too many cities in the world that are like New Orleans. In fact, I don't just, toss that out there casually. It was only within the last month that TripAdvisor published a list of the top 10 restaurant cities in the world. And again, we can always argue whether one is better, whether one should replace another, but I will tell you this. After you see the Romes and the Florences and the Paris and the Barcelona, the next one up on that list is New Orleans, right before New York City. So even if you're just thinking about the United States of America, there can be no argument, really, that one of the great food cities in this country is New Orleans. Every time I've been, and you know what, here's the thing, even though I'm a variety junkie, when I go there are certain things that I must have. I'm sitting down for as many oysters as I can eat. Sometimes I'll have them just straight up raw. Other times they do them char grilled or barbecued or whatever you want to call it. I mean, they're both great. And, you know, a lot of people get hung up on what season is what, but you can still go down there and find what are called seasonal oysters. So you're really getting them in their prime. And I'm going to talk to Mitch, who I'll introduce to you soon, about what is the proper drink to have with both raw oysters as well as the grilled ones. I will always have myself a po' boy sandwich, and on mine, I'm going with again fried oysters and fried shrimp. And what makes the po' boy sandwich so fantastic, honestly, I mean, sure, fried shrimp you're not going to argue with. Nobody's going to argue with fried oysters, but that bread that they put it on. And they call it a po' boy. So depending on what part of the country or the world that you're in, you could say it's a sandwich. You could say it's a grinder. You could say it's a sub. You could say whatever it is that a hero, whatever it is that you call it. What's so brilliant about this particular sandwich, frankly, is the bread, because somehow it maintains kind of a light crispiness on the outside, and yet the inside is chewy, and I don't know, it's just such a brilliant sandwich. So I'm down there, I'm going to be having some oysters, I'm going to be having maybe some crawfish, and here's the thing, you could spend a week there in that city and only just begin to touch some of what's available in terms of Cajun cooking and Creole cooking. There by the mouth of Mississippi is some of the greatest source of fish and seafood in our entire country. It's just a great place to be. I will also report to you that it's party town, man. I mean, I would leave the hotel at 8 or 8:30 in the morning. People were already, they were already cocktailing, and I will tell you this, that at some point, and it was right around 10 in the morning, I walked out of my hotel, passing by the very famous bar called, I think, the Carousel. It's the Carousel Bar. The Carousel Bar literally is a bar that you sit on your bar stool and you rotate as if you're on a carousel while you're having a drink. I had my first Sazerac of my life during this trip. That was exciting for me. It was just awesome. But at around 10 in the morning, a woman actually stepped out of the Carousel Bar, saw me leaving the lobby, and looked at me, and she said, "Handsome." And I mean, on the one hand, I'm taken aback, but on the other, here's what occurred to me immediately. Number one, she was wearing glasses. Number two, she was holding on to a very, very large cocktail. And apparently she had had so many of them because I had to open the door for her to leave the hotel. And trust me, she was not walking easily. So even though I got the compliment, it came from as many people as I saw there, and as many as were drinking. She clearly had the most. One of the other advantages of having been on this trip was not only to meet Dario, the LeBron James of butchers, and sometime over the next couple of days I will put that video interview online. It'll probably show up in the Daily Meal. But I had the chance to meet some great people, and one of the people that I met along the way is Mitch Frank. Now, Mitch Frank grew up in Miami, Florida, and he, from a young age, was always interested in travel and food, and he spent summers abroad, and I can totally identify with that. He goes to the University of Virginia, and he gets into writing. In fact, at some point makes his way to Entertainment Weekly and writes for Time magazine. And he covered two presidential elections there, including the 2000 recount and the attacks of September 11th and the war on terrorism. So I'm sure that that led him to writing two books for teenage readers. One was Understanding September 11th, and the other was Understanding the Holy Land. Now, Mitch develops a passion for wine, and at some point joins the staff of Wine Spectator. That was 2005. That was not at some point. That was specific. He is the news editor for the magazine and the website, winespectator.com. And I said it before, and I will say it again, Wine Spectator is easily one of the most prestigious names in the field of wine and wine writing and wine criticism and wine rating. And he, writes and edits feature stories for the magazine and has profiled some very super high-profile people in the wine and food world, like Angelo Gaggia and Danny Meyer. And then he and his wife moved to her hometown, which happens to be New Orleans, Louisiana. And even though he claims to drink wine for a living, while he's not drinking wine, he loves great food, great music, cycling, and watching the New York Mets break his heart. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mitch Frank. Mitch, thank you for being here.
Hey, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Mitch, I guess the first question that I have to ask is, how is it possible that a kid from Miami who goes to school in Virginia and moves to New Orleans is a fan of the New York Mets?
Well, my family is originally from Queens and Brooklyn.
Okay.
And so we growing up in Miami, we did not have the Marlins at that point. And my father took me up on a bunch of trips to New York and said, "Where do you want to go?" And he took me to Mets games. I had the pleasure, actually, Rusty Staub. I don't know if you ever got the chance to meet Rusty.
Yep.
Big wine fan, famous slugger for the Mets in the 70s and 80s. And he became a big wine Burgundy lover. And he was born and raised here in New Orleans, but I got to meet him down here, and I said, "It's your fault. I went to a game when I was 10 years old, and you hit a pinch hit home run to win the game, and I've been a Mets fan ever since. It's brought me a lot of sorrow." And he said, "Kid, you're not the first person to tell me that."
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I did have a chance to meet him, and I also, at some point, having lived here essentially my entire life, was within walking distance of Rusty's. I'm going to say like 76th and 3rd. So you pop over there periodically, because what he was known for, other than for his love of wine and his kind of amazing baseball career, was the ribs over there were very good. He had really good barbecued ribs.
Well, if you ever looked at Rusty, he was not shy about eating. So he took it seriously.
He was
born and raised here, so a lot of good food, and he was into good steak, good ribs.
Yeah, he was a big boy. Mitch, let me ask you a question, because I like to start with kind of like in general, and then we can get more specific as we move on. Broadly in general with wine, like what's going on? It seems to me that we're drinking more of it.
We are. I would say that per capita consumption in the U.S. has been going up, how much each of us is drinking. Keep in mind, there's still, it's still only, it's not a majority of the country that's drinking wine regularly, but those of us who are, we're drinking more. The past few years, though, we've seen kind of a slowing down of that growth. And so we're not drinking more necessarily, but we are drinking better. And we're seeing that people are starting to be a little more adventurous. They're starting to look away from that comfort zone of California Cab or California Chardonnay. They're exploring other regions, other countries, and other styles and grapes. And it's great to see. They're also willing to spend more. Right now, most people for big wine companies say that wine sales for wines $10 and down are dropping, while wine sales for bottles $10 and higher are going up dramatically. So we're getting better taste.
We're trading up, is what you're saying. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, that's good. And my understanding also, and I may have even learned this from you in the article, which we're going to get to in a minute, is that your younger people, your millennials, are drinking more wine and are more open to trying varieties that people might not have in the past.
Yeah, that's the big question for the wine industry right now. Is they're wondering, okay, are the millennials going to be? Because it's not the baby boomers were the bread and butter
Oh, okay.
for the wine industry for so long, and they still are. But as they retire, they're starting to cut back on their spending a bit. Some of them, and the Gen Xers, my generation, we're drinking, we're coming online and drinking a lot more, but we're a much smaller generation.
Right.
And millennials, they're into cocktails, they're into craft beer.
Right.
There's been a lot of talk with the legalization of cannabis around the country. Is that going to have a big impact on whether people drink as much? But they're into wine too. And what we're seeing is they're much more willing to experiment. They're not looking for, the same wine that their parents drank.
Now let me ask you this. Aside from rosé, because I know that's we're going to spend some time on that, and I hope this isn't a silly kind of notion, but do certain wines just lend themselves to the summer season?
Oh, sure.
What?
I mean, you don't usually crack open a bottle of port in the middle of July. But there are certain wines. Obviously people look a lot towards rosé and white wines. But even your lighter reds, it's really a question of thinking about what you're eating, what's going to pair well with it, and looking for wine with a bit more vibrance. It's okay in the colder months to drink something ponderous and big and bold, but that's not always the right idea during the summer. Now, I will say, if you're going to barbecue and cook something big and meaty, yeah, you might want that big red.
Right.
But there's also a lot of reds that they have nice balance, they have acidity. We're going to see a lot of Pinot Noir and a lot of more vibrant other reds too, and people are going to reach for them at this time of year, I think.
So let's cut over to your article that I mentioned before. It is the cover story of the current issue, June 2018 issue of Wine Spectator, and it's a story that's all about rosé. I want to say a couple of things, which is this: first of all, congratulations, because the article is terrific, and I'm telling you, I'm not prone to either hyperbole or BS. I read the article 3 times. It was that good. So I will say to anybody who doesn't happen to subscribe to Wine Spectator, if you grab yourself a copy because you want to know anything about rosé, how it came to be where it is right now, which is like explosively popular, this is a great article to read. And I also congratulate you, Mitch, because the last time your Wine Spectator wrote a cover story about rosé was 10 years ago.
Yeah, and I wrote that one, and at the time there wasn't a huge amount of interest, so we were ahead of the curve. And now certainly rosé is riding a big wave, and it's the June 30th issue. We actually have 2 issues out this month, so look for the one with the rosé on the cover. And we've got some fun bottles, because the great thing about rosé is it comes in a lot of different shades, a lot of different shades of pink, and a lot of different fun bottles. It's supposed to be a fun wine. What is it
that? So again, when I talk about the kind of, it seems to me that it's this enormous. I hate to use the word trendy. It's just that I've seen more rosé in the past couple of summers than I've ever seen at any time in my life, and I'm happy. I don't know. I'm no wine expert here. Like, I'm happy drinking any color pretty much any time. But what do you think? What accounts for kind of the explosive growth? I think I saw in your article 44% sales increase year over year. What accounts for the kind of the growth, the phenomenal growth of rosé?
I think there are a lot of different factors. For one, I think it's a question of after the financial crisis and the Great Recession, a lot of people were looking for affordable luxury. And a lot of rosé gives that. It's not fussy. It's not, people don't get as intimidated with it. You can just open a bottle and you don't have to worry too much about it. The other thing is, Provence really made a big impact here. For a long time, Provence has made great rosés for decades and centuries. but they were happy to drink most of it at home, and quality was not a big focus. But really, in the past 20 years, they upped the quality of their game, and then they made a big push here because they thought that younger drinkers here would be interested, and they really kind of caught people's attention. They've been slowly working on the idea that, one, rosé is not necessarily sweet, because most people here remember White Zin back in the 80s when that was a huge boom, and they remember it was sweet. They thought they saw pink and they thought sweet, and that's not the case with Provençal rosé. And they also said, it's not sweet, and you don't have to just drink it in the summer. It's a very food flexible, fun wine.
You mentioned Provence, and I guess, if somebody said to me, here's the limit of what I would know, basically, Domaine Art or Bandol, that feels to me as a former kind of, marketing branding guy, those really stand out as kind of known, high level, I think, brands. But I guess my question to you is, does it have to be Provence? I think part of your article was, no, there's some rosé being produced in other parts of the world. What is it about? What other places? What's the thinking about? From you as from an expert, it doesn't have to be Provence. Where else can we get great rosé from?
Well, really anywhere where they're growing red grapes and the weather is warm, rosé usually has taken hold. If you think about it, all these places where it's nice and warm and sunny, which is ideal for ripening red grapes, but at the same time, it's too hot in the summer to drink a lot of heavy red. They've made rosé. Spain has a long history of great rosés. They call it rosado, and they make it from garnacha. It tends to be, it varies from producer to producer. They tend to be a little darker colored. Tavel is a great region if you want to look in France outside Provence. It's just across the river from Châteauneuf-du-Pape. They make kind of a deep orange-colored rosé, and it's got some more heft and some more structure. California has caught on now, and they're making some nice dry rosés as well. Italy, too. So there's a lot of potential. Oregon, I'm seeing more and more rosé of Pinot Noir from Oregon on the market. So there's a lot out there, and that's kind of one of the things I call out in my article. Is it's a bit of a warning sign that so much of the rosé on the market now is either Provence or modeled on Provence. And your rosé should taste like the place it came from. What works in Provence does not necessarily work in California or Spain. And the beauty of rosé is that it comes in so much variety. So I would encourage your listeners to go out and try a bunch of different styles and different shades.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, and I want to get to some of what those might be. I think what I discovered from the article was something that kind of doesn't surprise me in some ways about the American, palate, which tends to be tentative, I guess is the way I would say it. You have producers and importers who are saying that if they don't shade the wine in the classic shade of that light pink, or however you want to describe the Provençal rosé, that they can't sell it. In other words, the people here are Americans, that is to say, are inclined to kind of consume what it is that looks comfortable, familiar, and comfortable to them, versus the idea of, wait a second, you mean I can get a rosé that's like way darker or orange tinted? That's interesting to me. Can you help me with that a little?
Yeah, I think that's one of the great things about it is, as I said, the variety. And I would encourage people, what I was hearing from producers is a bit of concern. Rosé styles are still growing in this country, but for the first time this year, we're starting to see so many brands coming into the market that it's starting to hurt sales for some of them. There's been kind of a flood. And as you were saying, it's all kind of one style. I love value as much as the next consumer, but a lot of it tends to be under $10. Yeah. Which, if you can find quality, that's great. But a lot of times that low price is because a lot of corners have been cut.
Yeah.
And we're seeing some wines that don't meet the quality that we look for. So I would encourage people to be looking for more diversity and look for more. And that doesn't mean Provençal Rosé isn't fantastic. We recommend a lot of wines in the issue. And you can also find our app, Wine Ratings Plus, on on your phone for Android or for the iPhone, and you can find lots of recommendations there to help you find a good quality rosé at a great value price. But you have to do a little bit of your homework now, which it's a little harder when you walk into the store and you see about 50 different rosé brands on the shelf as you walk in.
Yeah, that actually is the problem in a nutshell. Honestly, I'm happy drinking wine, and I go into the wine store, and oftentimes, exactly that, confronted with too many. Like, it's almost surprising how many different, considering how expensive it is to get into the wine making business, it's kind of surprising to see how ubiquitous the selection is. I mean, it's intimidating, frankly, because again, we kind of didn't grow up here with a wine culture, and so I guess you're in a good position. We have to depend on you because we don't really know enough about what to choose. Do you? So you have the app that you just mentioned, which is kind of perfect, and you also kind of have indicated that in the story itself you've made a lot of recommendations. Am I right?
Yeah, we've got, after the main story, we've got multiple pages of recommendations from multiple regions, from France to Italy to Spain to America to other regions. Oregon, I see here, and Argentina,
nice.
Portugal. The idea is to give people as many options so that when they go into the store, they can look. And they can also talk to the retailer in the store. Find somebody you trust who seems to know what he's talking about. Ask him what he likes. And if he's just trying to steer you to something that they're trying to clear out, that's one thing. But if he's as enthused about wine as you are, he's going to help you, or she. Find something that really makes you happy. And, tell them what you're eating that night. Because one of the great things I find, I'm always surprised that we don't drink more rosé down here in New Orleans. I find that rosé grows pretty well with a crawfish boil, or Asian cuisine. We have a lot of great Vietnamese food, or a lot of other great foods that have some spice to them.
I think part of by the way, I think part of the appeal is, you mentioned in the article how well rosé pairs with food, so I'm going to talk to you about that. And I think also the price point. I got to say that even though, and you make a good point, I think the stuff that feels to me like the stuff that you can get below $10 for the most part is not going to be where you are. But if you're willing to spend, 15, 20, $25, you can get some really lovely, lovely rosé wine.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. You don't have to, certain varieties in certain regions, if you want quality in Napa Cabernet, it's hard to look under $40,
right?
And it's very easy to spend $200. But with rosé, you don't have to lurch. You just have to go up a little. And like I said, there are some brands for under $10 that I think are very good.
Well,
they just take a little more of an intense search.
Anything you offhand want to mention?
Off the top of my head, that would be good. Unfortunately, I think La Ville Fermée, which is one of my favorites from the Perrin family, I think they've probably cracked. I think they're at $11 now, but it's still a great value.
Oh, that's sweet. That's good. All right, that's good to know. All right, now explain to people tell people what I'm going to give some names to you and tell everybody what they have in common. You ready? Drew Barrymore, Sophia Coppola, Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, and John Bon Jovi. What do these people all have in common?
They all make rosé.
Well, yes, exactly. Come on, I'm picking it up from your article. What is it First of all, why? Like, why is there any reason at all that those people that I just mentioned got into the rosé business?
Well, for each producer, it's different. I mean, the Sofia Coppola wine is product of her father, Francis Ford Coppola, and then you have Drew Barrymore got involved in this California project, and obviously one of the most famous is Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie's Chateau Miraval in Provence. You know, it's fun and it's easy drinking. John Bon Jovi, who we interviewed in the issue, my colleague Jillian Ciaretta interviewed him, and he and his son decided to get into wine, and he said, you know, when I'm in the Hamptons in the summer, that's all I drink. It's the Hamptons version of bottled water. So he said, if I'm going to make a wine, I want a wine that I'm going to drink and it's going to be fun. So they partnered with Jérôme Bouchon, who is one of the most influential winemakers in the south of France, and produced their Diving into Hamptons Water, which is a fun name, and it started to sell out pretty quickly. But that's the thing. I think it's a very low pressure, fun way to get into the wine business. Because really, all of us, if we had enough money, wouldn't we buy a vineyard somewhere in the south of France?
Yeah, I'm up for that. If you find the money, count me in.
All right, I'll let you know when that happens.
Now, because you have raised the Hamptons, it's a natural segue for me to ask you about that, because you have the Wolfer estate out there, and I know it pretty well because I spent some time out there. I have gone on over the summers. It's one of the most delightful things to do, frankly, on I think it's a Friday, Saturday kind of 6 p.m. thing. You pop over there. I can bike actually over there, and you sit outside, basically on the vineyard itself, drinking Summer in a Bottle while live music is playing and kids are dancing. It's just a lovely scene. And so, Summer in a Bottle. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to ask you. You're the expert on this. I'm happy drinking this stuff. I don't actually know, where it stands on kind of the qualitatively, relative to what else is available. I will say, though, that it is a triumph of marketing. I mean, it's that between the name and the label, I think I saw somewhere in your article that, let's see exactly what it was. They went from selling pretty much nothing to selling, let me see if I can get the numbers right, 92, yeah. Oh, they went from selling 82 cases of their rosé in the year 1992 to over 60,000 cases right now. Talk a little bit about Summer in a Bottle. What's your experience with it?
Well, as you said, yeah, rosé was not a big business for them. And, I actually did a cover story on New York wines about 12 years ago. And I went to visit Wolfer, and I went and met with their talented winemaker, Roman Roth,
right.
Who's been there for decades now. And it was this great little winery out on the South Fork in the Hamptons. And they made some nice Chardonnay and some Cabernet Franc. And they weren't getting a huge traction. They made very good wine, but the locals were like, oh, it's a New York, it's a Long Island winery. And then they shifted focus to rosé, and rosé started to catch on, and now 75% of their production is rosé. They're selling 60,000 cases a year of it.
Right.
And Summer in a Bottle, you look at it and you just want to drink. You think of summer. It's got the flowers and the fruit, and it's a very fresh, kind of refined rosé, I would say. We gave their 2014 89 points, just nice. A hair short of outstanding. Uh-huh. And it really has a lot of fun. It's a interesting, fascinating blend: Merlot, Chardonnay, Cabernet Franc, Gewürztraminer. So they're really trying to give complexity. And that's really one of the keys with good rosé, is that winemaking is serious. For decades, rosé was kind of a byproduct of red winemaking. When you crush the grapes, you let them soak for a little bit, and then you bleed off some of the juice, to leave less juice on the grape skins and make a more concentrated red wine.
Right.
And in recent decades, there's been more of a focus on, wait a second, that juice that we bleed off to make rosé, it's not that great. So why don't we pick the grapes earlier, make sure that they're more vibrant, and try to make rosé on purpose. And that's what Wolfer and a lot of these good Provençal estates are doing. That's working for them.
Even though it's clear that the quality has increased, I guess my question to you is this. When you look at the Wine Spectator, say, top 100 for the year 2017, are there any rosés in your top 100? Did any crack that list?
I don't believe so for this year. We had a few in recent years, so they have made it. But that is a question. Do we not give rosé enough credit? And that's really, that's a question for us, and it's a question for consumers. I talk a lot about France in the story because France picked up rosé before we did. And actually, we're ahead of the English. We're drinking a huge amount of rosé, and only 7% of the wine drunk in England, which is a big wine nation, big wine consuming nation, is rosé. But in France, they now drink more rosé than they drink white wine.
Right.
A third of the wine they're drinking every year is rosé. But when I speak to French winemakers, okay, do the French take rosé seriously? They say for the most part, no. They go to the supermarket and they buy the cheapest bottle. For some reason, we look for what kind of red wine do we want to drink tonight? What kind of white wine do we want to drink tonight? Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, something different. When it comes to rosé, we just think, well, I want a rosé. We don't think, well, what kind of rosé? What sort of rosé matches well with our food and our mood that evening? So we're not giving enough credit just yet.
Yeah, and you've really hit on, Mitch, I really think that you've hit on what the issue is, because we in general here are not sophisticated in terms of what we know about wine. But even as we grow to learn more about different varieties, we can kind of distinguish between different reds and whites. I think people still see rosé as being rosé. So I think it's exactly what you said. I just don't think that we've gotten there yet in terms of understanding the capacity for variety within that. Now, that said, I got to say, I'm a guy who, again, I'm no wine expert. I could tell you right now, my palate is very simple. I know I could distinguish between not so good, and whoa, that's really, really good. And because I'm a food guy, what I'll drink when I'm drinking white, I'm a big fan of the Alsatian Pinot Gris, and the reason why is because it goes so nicely with food. And when it comes to, and I love, by the way, and I'm going to ask you what I should be having with my oysters. I love, with the oysters, drinking a nice Sancerre. I'm a fan of that. And when it comes to rosé, that's what I'm going with this. I started in terms of understanding variety. I found some Sancerre rosé, and I was like, oh, this is very exciting. This I can really enjoy.
Yeah, and you know what Sancerre, what they make their rosé from?
Is what?
Pinot Noir. So really, if you're a fan of Pinot Noir,
I am my number one,
especially French Pinot Noir. But you're eating something where maybe a Pinot Noir is a bit too much. Mm-hmm. Looking for a Pinot Noir rosé is a way to go. And there's several great ones, both from Sancerre and also from Oregon and California. We recommended here the Ponzi. Ponzi is a longtime Oregon producer of Pinot Noir. They have theirs for $22 a bottle. Got 89 points. A very good, almost outstanding from us. It really, the fun thing with rosé and food is you can look for that variety. If you're looking for something like oysters, I would go with Provençal. I would go for Provence because it's a very light, crisp style.
Right.
Whereas, if you're doing, some smoked, you're doing some grilled meat, some sausage, Or maybe you're coming over to my house for a crawfish boil. You need something with a little more heft. I'd go with that Tavel, which is a deeper red. Or maybe one of my favorite Rioja rosés, Rosado, from Bodegas Muga, or even from the Vino Tondonia from Lopez de Heredia in Rioja. They're a long time Rioja producer, and their rosé is a little more rich and a little more funky.
I want to play. Let me just make sure that I've exhausted the questions before I play a fun game with you. Speaking about like matching things together, I'm trying to think if there was something. By the way, I just as an aside, I would say if I had to choose a red, just like I don't know if you want to call it like every day. I happen to be a lover of the Oregon Pinot. And I met that Luisa Ponzi, and then the Ponzi has always produced a beautiful wine for me. Did I understand right? Do they do something that's not Pinot? Do they do a rosé too at a Ponzi?
Well, they do a rosé, but it's made from Pinot Noir.
Right. And color wise, is it going to be darker than the Provençal?
Yeah, it's a little darker. It's more closer to I would say the watermelon color than that light pink. Right.
All right. Very good. Let me go back just to one other piece in your article here. High quality rosé is all about avoiding excesses. The balance has to be just right for the purpose. Good rosé is not too alcoholic. It's completely dry. Has acidity, but not too much. Lots of aromatics. No tannin. It has to be thirst quenching and easy to drink. Now, those are all great characteristics in general for something that you're going to pair well with food. So the game that I kind of wanted to play, I don't want to put you on the spot, but here's what I thought I would do. I was going to take some recipes from my very own book. I'll choose the recipe in the dish, and you get to choose what wine, and it could be any. It does not have to be rosé. All right. So in my cookbook, I'm not afraid to start off at breakfast because I do a dish called eggs puttanesca, which borrows from the Italian pasta dish, and in fact I put pasta left over in this egg dish and then give it the rest of the puttanesca kind of ingredients. So you're going to have some olives in there, and you're going to have a little bit of red pepper. You have red pepper flakes. You have a little bit of spiciness in there. What should we drink with that, Mitch?
Ooh, that's a tricky way to start. But that's okay. I like a challenge. I would say that for that you want I'm going to go with a Chianti Classico, a Sangiovese. You could also do a Vino Nobile de Montepulciano. You're not looking for a heftier Sangiovese like a Brunello,
right?
Because you want to have a little bit of acidity. I think a nice Chianti Classico would go very nice. If you wanted to go in a different direction, I would go over to the east coast of Italy and maybe get a Pecorino, which sounds like cheese, but it's actually a nice white wine with a little heft. And if you want to go with a rosé, maybe a Rosato from Sicily, which is going to be a darker, more muscular style of rosé.
You would like my eggs, by the way, because I do. I'll take yesterday's pasta. We have some eggs scrambled in. We might throw in, like I said, some olives and some capers. And what else is? Oh yeah, and of course we're going to use some cheese, and it could easily be Pecorino cheese. It just coincidentally. A little crusty loaf on the side, and with any one of those wines, that would be a decent way to start off a Saturday. All right, for an appetizer, Mitch, one of the things that I make with some regularity in the summer season, and normally, tequila is consumed, but I'm big on the guacamole. Costco, and I am the Costco ho, will sell you 6 avocados at a time. They're Hass avocados. I learned how to make it, I feel like the right way from a very well-known chef in Mexico. So tomatoes never go in my guacamole because guacamole is a celebration of the avocado. but it does have in it a little, a little bit of jalapeno, a little bit of or serrano, even better. Obviously cilantro and lime, and a touch of garlic. That's the only optional thing. But what kind of, if we're not having beer or tequila, is there a decent wine to drink when I serve guacamole and chips?
I think you're going to want to go with something that has some creaminess and richness to stand up to that guac. All that avocado, which sounds delicious, and I got no problem with Costco. I go there all the time. Their wine selection's pretty decent too.
Let me ask you about that.
I would say for that, California Chardonnay would be perfectly respectable with that.
Right.
I would also, maybe I'm going to go to Italy again, maybe go with a Soave Classico, a decent Soave from one of the better producers like Anselmi or Pra. Or you could go with a Viura, which is, I'm going to say a Godello. Godello is a grape that was almost extinct a few decades ago, and they brought it back in Spain, kind of on the edge of Galicia. And it has that kind of richness. It's going to still have some acidity to cut through the fattiness, but it's going to have the richness to pair up with that too.
Thank you, sir. We're still on some recipes from the book. I do, this is an obvious one for the summer. We're going to light up the grill this very weekend. I will probably be able to pick up at Costco, incidentally, and they don't, trust me, it doesn't really matter. They're not paying me. Everybody knows that I spend every week of my life there. I'll probably be picking up some ribs. They could be baby back. They may be St. Louis, whatever they got going. Costco also happens to sell a filet mignon, but I mean like the entire filet mignon. It's like 10 pounds of it. Or some organic, ground meat. Anyway, I'm thinking here mixed grill. And I'm coming over to you and going, what are we going to drink with that? And you could pick however many you want. But I feel like I'll have ribs and I'll have steak and I'll have burgers. What should we be drinking?
Well, if you want to go with something outside the box, I'd go with a rosé. I think that if you went with one of those Tavels that we were talking about, that's right across the river from Chateauneuf du Pape. It's going to have a little bit of tannin and some muscle, but it's going to be, very light and vibrant at the same time. If you want to go red, I think you go back down to Italy. I know you told me you went to Umbria recently, or a while back, and Sagrantino, great local grape there that really has a lot of muscle and stands up to meat very well.
I love that call, by the way, and I love that trip, and I was there recently. I believe it was October, and I was really impressed with exactly what you just said, that's Sagrantino. And it showed up, by the way, on your top 100 list as well. I mean, there's one on your list. I don't remember at what price point, but thank you for that. I love that. I should mention also, by the way, because I've been somewhat remiss, just for those who don't know, the book is Short Order Dad, and One Guy's Guide to Making Food Fun and Hassle-Free, that I'm pulling these recipes from my cookbook. And much as I am somewhat uncomfortable with the patting myself on the back, Short Order Dad just showed up within the last week on Goodreads, when all the employees of the company, and it's a big company owned by Amazon, where 65 million people go to read about books and book reviews, they listed Short Order Dad as one of their recommendations for summer reading. Very excited about that. Now, Short Order Dad. Now, so also from my book, I'm going to give you my fish and seafood things here, Mitch. Number one, I make very regularly what I call ancho chili shrimp. So I use the ancho chili, which is not too spicy, but it has a fruitiness, and I saute the shrimp with some olive and garlic after I hit them up with the ancho chili. I could squeeze a little bit of lime in there to finish them. And I also do, if we're going to the grill, but we're not going to go meat, what are we going to drink with maybe some piece of grilled swordfish or grilled tuna?
Well, I think that definitely is a good situation for a rosé, because you have both kind of the best of red and white. Mm-hmm. I think, if you're going with swordfish, You probably want something a bit heftier. You want a richer, darker style. I think you could go, there's some good Sonoma County rosés made from Syrah or Pinot Noir. Or, the seafood, if you're grilling some shrimp, I like to do, or some other shellfish, you could go with a lighter style. You could go with that Provençal style rosé. Or you could go with a lighter red, maybe a Beaujolais, or maybe some Cabernet Franc from the Loire Valley.
I don't want to forget this, but what's the ideal temperature to serve your red wine?
Well, we tend to serve our white wines too cold and our red wines too warm.
Right.
So I would say, if you want, you throw that red in the fridge an hour before, it'll be perfect. You want to, I don't get too technical, but I think, at 70 degrees or 65 degrees, that's a great window. And your whites, you really want it, more around like 50 degrees. You want it chilled, but you don't want it cold. Sometimes if you're keeping it in the fridge to get it cold, just take it out 20 minutes before you serve it.
Right. And I think that's really the way to do it, is not scientifically. Take your white out 20 minutes before you want to serve it, and put your reds in the fridge about an hour before you want to serve it. What about with rosé? What's our temperature on that?
Similar to white.
Right. Okay.
You want it to be, and it also depends on the wine. Really, the great thing, just taste it, see if the temperature's good. If not, pop it in the fridge or leave it on the counter for a little while until it's where you like it.
Let me give you two more from the book to match up, because I was interested when I was interviewing Dickie Brennan. He was talking about tomatoes. I said, when do your tomatoes come in? And he said June, which surprised me in the sense that we get tomatoes on the East Coast in the Hamptons, as an example, that are peaking kind of mid-July. They're peaking mid-July and August, and his are coming in June. So what are we serving with a tomato, red onion, olive, caper, gorgonzola salad?
Oof. Now you're getting challenging. I like it. I think a nice crisp Sauvignon Blanc, maybe a white Sancerre. That'd be a lot of fun. I think Muscadet from the Loire Valley's other end, closer to the ocean, is also really nice with that. Or you could go with an Albarino from Spain. You're looking for something nice and crisp there, I think.
Love it. And I know that you have to go, so I want to, first of all, thank you for being here. If you're ever in my neighborhood, I'll be happy to cook any one of these dishes that I mentioned for you. So thank you so much for being here with me tonight. For people who want to learn about rosé, catch the, what is it, the June 30 issue, Mitch, of Wine Spectator?
Yes. Just look for the pink bottles on the cover, and you'll find it.
And you'll learn a ton about rosé. It's just a fantastic article. And if people want to find you online, Mitch, where is the best place? What's the best place for people to find you?
At winespectator.com.
Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Our man, Mitch Frank, and thank you for all of that knowledge. I am excited to... Well, I'm always excited to drink, but now I am excited to drink with some better understanding of what's happening in wine, specifically what's happening in rosé. Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Rob.
All right. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Mitch Frank, and I will say that time really just goes so beautifully and so quickly. I would have asked Mitch about frosé, because I confess that I like a frosé. How do you make a frosé? You basically take a bottle of rosé, and you empty it into either an ice tray or a glass dish that you can fit into the freezer, and you basically freeze it, because you know that it'll never freeze at 100% because of the alcohol in it. And then you make essentially a strawberry kind of syrup, if you will. Like it's a simple syrup, which is an equal amount of water and sugar that you boil for 3 minutes. Throw some strawberries in there so that they infuse the simple syrup with the flavor of strawberry, and then basically get out your blender. And when you get out your blender, you're putting in all of that now frozen kind of mushy, icy rosé. You're going to put in, like, let's say, a quarter of a cup of strawberry simple syrup, and you're going to blend away. Except that if you're at my place, you're going to add in a quarter of a cup of vodka, because why not? I love a frosé. And I'll tell you what else I love, and I haven't even had it yet, but I cannot wait to get it. Apparently, the company called Sugarfina, which some of you may have heard of, it's a retail operation that sells an awful lot of sugar-based products, are making gummy bears in the flavor of rosé. It's called Rosé All Day Gummy Bears. You can find it, I think, at Bloomingdale's online, and trust me, as good. I would be happy having Rosé All Day Gummy Bears. To be honest with you, I'd be even happier if they had what do you call some of that cannabis in them as well. Anyway, I will we'll leave it at that for this week, and remind you that I'll be back next Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, for All You Can Eat. I'm very excited to close out tonight by telling you that all of these podcasts are archived, and they're archived on Spreaker and YouTube and SoundCloud, and now officially, as of this week, all of the All You Can Eat podcasts are on iHeartRadio. Very exciting. Okay, my friends, that's it for this week. Remember that life is short. Never waste a meal. Grab yourself a rosé, and I'll be back with you next week. Thank you. Love you. Bye-bye.
I'm the Teflon Pan Man.